Hi everyone, this is Erin from the She.Must.Knit podcast, and in episode 6 I talked about a project that I was working on. It's a colorwork hat, and I was turning the ribbed brim that the original pattern called for into a doubled brim. And so I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail about how I do that, because I realize not everybody has done that, and it's such a simple thing to do, and I find it adds just a little bit of extra warmth around your ears if that's something that you're interested in. So this is what I've started with. I have the base of the brim done, and what I usually do is I cast on the amount of stitches that the pattern calls for. The original pattern does use a ribbed brim, which would cinch in more than a stockinette brim. So if you want, you can choose to do a few less stitches than the pattern calls to cast on, or you can use a smaller needle. I don't find for myself that's necessary, so I just cast on with the needle size that I'm using for the pattern, and I cast on the amount of stitches called for. So I have done that, and you may notice that there is a little dip in my cast on edge there. What I do is I cast on my stitches, and I do not join in the round right away, but I knit a few rows before joining in the round. And what it does is it just makes it so much easier to join without having to worry about your stitches twisting on your needles. And then you can just get started, and when I'm all done, I will just sew that up with my tail, and you won't even notice it. It also makes the turning process much easier because I can see exactly where the beginning of my row is. So I've got my brim all ready to go here. I've knit 2 inches, which is how deep I like my brims to be. And then you can see here that I've done a contrast purl ridge. Now, the pattern that I'm working on currently calls for a contrast edging on the brim, so that is why I have done it with a contrast yarn. And to do that, I've done 1 row in just stockinette, 1 purl row, and then another row of the stockinette in the contrast color. If I wasn't using a contrast color, then I would just do 1 single purl row in my main yarn. And then once I'm done that, I do the exact amount of knitting that I did below that purl ridge, I do above that purl ridge, so that when I fold my brim under, it's the same length. So once you've done that, we're just going to fold the brim, and we're going to look for the beginning of the round, and that's going to be really easy to find because of that little dip from where I did a few rows before joining. And what you're going to look for is just your purl, the back of your, so I guess your reverse stockinette. On the back of your stockinette, you can see there's these little loops of stitches. And it doesn't have to be exact, but that's what you're looking for, just these little loops from the back from your cast on. And we're just going to position those up towards your first stitch. So to join, what we're going to do is we're going to go in through our first stitch on our needles, and then we're going to find the loop that's the closest to the beginning of my row, which is here. We're going to bring our working yarn, wrap around, we're going to go through that loop, and then through the first stitch on our needle, and take that stitch off. So those 2 stitches have been joined now. And we're just going to continue on, so I'm going to go through my second stitch. I'm going to look for the loop that's beside that first loop I used. There we go. I'm going to wrap my working yarn around, go through that loop, and then through the loop on my needle. And we're just going to continue doing that all the way around the hat. And it doesn't really have to be too precise at the back as long as you're not skipping stitches, because you're just going to be joining back there. So you can kind of see how back here the stitches are joined and to the front there. And I'm just going to keep going, and I will come back when I'm towards the end. So I'm back, and I only have about 5 stitches left to go to join the rest of my brim. So again, I'm just going to go into the first stitch on the needle, into one of the loops on the back there, around, pull it through that back loop, and through the loop on the needles. And I had mentioned before that you don't have to be too exact, and what I mean by that is whether you go into, a stitch at the top or in the middle or anywhere in this kind of area, that doesn't matter too much. You just don't want to skip across, because then you're going to run out of stitches when you get to the end of your row. So I've got just a few more. And I think that's it. So, okay, so all the stitches have been joined around the brim now, and you can see here is the back with that little dip from my cast on right there. And I will just take this tail and just kind of sew that up. But this is what it looks like. I've got my contrast edge down at the bottom, and you can see that that purl row that I did just makes a really nice clean edge. And then I have the back part of the brim now folded up, and there's my joining row there where I was picking up the stitches at the back, and it's just a really nice clean doubled nice and cozy brim. Now that I'm done the brim, I'm just going to continue following my pattern as written, taking into consideration any length requirements that they have written in. So like if they say to knit a certain part of the pattern so many inches from the start of the cast on, obviously I'm going to take this length into consideration. I hope this video was helpful. If you wanted to try a double brim, if you have any questions at all, you can just comment below or let me know in a message and I can try and help you out. So thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye.